Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 505 for the 23rd of June, 2018. Richard Saunders here with you, coming to you once again this week from the Bay Area, San Francisco. I was originally going to be home at the moment, fly home a few days ago. Situations have arisen, circumstances beyond my control. I need not go on. I'm in the Bay Area for another week and enjoying a very hot day. No, I'm not. It's too hot. It's going to be over 100 today, something like 38 degrees Celsius, 100 Fahrenheit. A good day to be indoors. Coming up on this week's show, we hear from the raw skeptic Heidi Robertson, who was in Brisbane recently at the Pregnancy, Babies and Children's Expo to offer her help to the Light for Riley stand. Now, Light for Riley is an organisation set up to promote vaccination in the community, and it was inspired by Riley Hughes, who tragically passed away from pertussis, whooping cough, in 2015, and he was just a tiny baby when he did. And his parents are continuing the fight now against vaccine-preventable diseases. I will link to Light for Riley in the show notes, but you'll hear from Catherine Hughes, Riley's mother, as well as Heidi Robertson wandering around the Babies Expo to see if she can snoop out any non-evidence-based things going on. Following that, we bring you another story from Queensland, where the fair trading part of the Queensland government has fined a business for making unsubstantiated cancer cure claims. And this is to do with skin cancer, and having had skin cancer myself, and having regular checkups, I take issue with anybody promoting false skin cancer cures. That story coming up a bit later on. Then to wrap up the show, another interview from Skeptical, the conference I was attending here in the Bay Area a couple of weeks ago. This week I talked to Kyle Polich from the Data Skeptic podcast. Now, why would anybody be skeptical about data? Find out later on with my interview from Skeptical. Now, just looking over the calendar, I can see that there are many skeptical conventions lined up for the rest of the year. We've got QED in the UK. We've got Nexus in New York. What else? In Las Vegas, there's SciCon coming up. But, of course, in Australia, in Sydney, Australia, this October 13th to 14th, we have the Australian Skeptics Convention. And this year will be the 34th consecutive annual convention. You can get your tickets at convention.skeptics.com.au. While you're there, you can check out the list of speakers this year. A couple of my favourites certainly coming along. Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki, always a popular speaker. Dr. Pamela Gay, the wonderful astronomer. Dr. Susan Blackmore speaking. All sorts of people. More news about that over the coming months. Dr. Lynn Kelly, indeed, will be there. So many good people. Get your tickets now at conventions.skeptics.com.au, and we'll see you there later on in the year. But now it's time for me to run upstairs to the kitchen, open the fridge, and see if there are any more Twinkies left. Twinkies, they're really nice. They're like Americans know what I mean. They're very tasty, like a little dessert sort of thing. Twinkies. I also discovered in a shop called the Dollar Store, root beer flavoured licorice. Wow, I'm really going to town here in the United States. What next? Well, there's always root beer. Well, I enjoy all that. I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
It's the Raw Skeptic Report with Heidi Robertson.
Hello everyone, Heidi Robertson here from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters Group. On Sunday, the 17th of June, I drove a couple of hours up the road to Brisbane or Bris Vegas as the locals like to call it, for the Pregnancy, Babies and Children's Expo. The expo ran over 3 days, and I was volunteering just for the Sunday for the Light for Riley stall with Catherine Hughes. Since baby Riley died of whooping cough in March 2015, his parents, Kath and Greg, have been tireless in their efforts to let people know of the importance of the third trimester whooping cough vaccine. Kath wasn't offered the vaccine, and baby Riley was too young to be vaccinated when he contracted the disease. So I had a chance to interview Kath, which we will get to shortly. But first, whilst I was there on my lunch break, I thought I'd wander around the expo and see if there was much non-evidence-based stuff being promoted by the stall holders. Well, I'm here at the 2018 Baby and Pregnancy Expo in Brisbane, Queensland. And the reason I'm here is to volunteer at the Light for Riley stand with Catherine Hughes, and more on that bit later. While I was here, I thought during my lunch break that I'd have a little walk around and see what kind of stalls are here in the way of woo. Because as we know, the Mind Body Wallet that I think is held in the same location here in Brisbane at the Exhibition Centre is full of it. So I thought, well, let's have a look around and see what sort of woo is being promoted to expectant mums and dads. And actually I've been really pleasantly surprised. There isn't that much here. There is an essential oil stand, and there is a brower stand. I think they sell mostly, well, the homeopathic stuff. And the other one that is a bit of a worry is the Chiropractic Association of Australia. They have a stall here too. I just walked past it and they've got a baby mannequin lying on its back on a chiropractic table. They've got a bit of paraphernalia around to hand out to people. The number of times I've walked past, there hasn't actually been anyone talking to them, which is good. And the other positive is that 3 years ago, when I was last here helping out the Light for Riley stall, the chiropractor's stand here had books called Well-Adjusted Babies, which is a well-known book in the chiropractic world, but there's a whole chapter on vaccination and why you should not vaccinate your baby. That chiropractic can apparently protect your baby against all sorts of infectious disease, they would have you believe. This year, I haven't seen any copies of those books around, so that is a plus. Anyway, having a bit more of a look around, but it's really good to see that there is a limited amount of woo here this year. Of course, there's a lot of stuff that parents probably don't need that's being sold to them, but not a lot of stuff that can actually harm baby or new mum. So that's a plus. And the other thing I've noticed is talking to lots and lots of people today about vaccination and how important the third trimester whooping cough vaccine is. We've had a really positive response. I have not talked to one hesitant person. They all seem to, well, if I had to take a guess, over 95% of the people I've spoken to already knew about the third trimester whooping cough vaccine, which is a big difference to 3 years ago when I was here. And they have all been very, very supportive. Either they've already had their vaccinations, they're booked in to have them. So that's been really just heartwarming, and I can't imagine what that must mean to Kath as well. Of course, she's been instrumental in promoting the vaccine and getting the vaccine in the third trimester free for all pregnant mums. So very positive, very positive. I'm feeling so good coming up to Brisbane from Byron Bay. with so many parents in Brisbane who just seem to be so pro-vaccination. Absolutely wonderful. New parents are prime targets for the woo crowd, as they often aren't sure what they need for the new arrival, and of course they want to provide the best for the baby and feel confident that they have everything that's needed prior to the baby's grand entrance into the world. I recall my first pregnancy 11 years ago and how overwhelmed I often felt at the myriad of products out there, all claiming to be able to help settle the baby, to help feed the baby more easily, carry the baby, push the baby, clothe the baby, change the baby, bathe the baby, wrap the baby, and so on. You are encouraged to purchase products to help the baby's physical and emotional development, to play your baby specific music whilst they are still in utero, that you must learn baby massage to create that bonding experience with your new baby. The list is endless. I'm happy to say, however, that although there were many, many things on show at the Expo that expectant parents probably don't need, there were relatively few things that had the potential to actually cause harm. In fact, I counted only 3 stalls that sold products or offered services that would make a skeptic raise an eyebrow. The first was an aromatherapy stall selling essential oils. Their website described essential oils as, quote, a powerful way to enhance a positive mental and emotional state and build resistance to pathogens, end quote. Alongside these essential oils, they were selling aromatherapy diffusers, apparently to allow the essential oils to be, quote, further enhanced by the high-frequency vibrations of the ultrasonic waves, end quote. They could just advertise them as, for example, makes the baby's room smell less like poo, but I guess high-frequency vibrations of ultrasonic waves sounds a little bit more impressive. There was also a homeopathy stall with a well-known homeopathic brand that is still sold in pharmacies across Australia today. Their products relating to babies are ones for coughs and colds, runny noses, reflux, colic, and there's one for cold, flu and immunity support. Their website states that the immunity support product contains vitamin D3 to support immune system health in healthy children. It goes on to say this product also contains homeopathic ingredients traditionally used in homeopathic medicine to relieve fatigue in healthy children. Influenza, as we know, is a horrible illness that is truckloads worse than the common cold. I would hope that a baby with influenza symptoms would not be given a homeopathic product in the place of getting medical attention. The third stall was one run by the Chiropractic Association of Australia and manned by chiropractors, one of whom, when I visited at least, specialised in paediatrics. They had a baby mannequin lying on its back on a chiropractic table and were handing out information on the alleged benefits of chiropractic for the pregnant mum, plus the newborn itself. I went and had a brief chat to them about chiropractic and the newborn and asked why it was necessary, in their opinion, to take a newborn to a chiropractor. The answer I was given was that the birth experience is highly physically traumatic for the baby. Their paediatric chiropractors could adjust the baby to maintain optimal health and well-being for the child. Problems with reflux and feeding could also be helped, they said. I asked how they diagnosed such problems in a newborn. It's all by touch, I was told, and the adjustments are little more than the pressure you could comfortably put on your own closed eyelid with your thumb. I thought to myself at that point, wow, every time someone picks up and holds a newborn, they're putting more than that amount of pressure on them just by the fact that they are carrying a 3 to 4 kilogram weight in their arms. I had a flashback of holding my squirming babies still on the change table, literally restraining them while I completed the not-so-easy nappy changes. How is it that we are not all subluxating our babies' spines left, right and centre? perhaps we are, according to the chiropractors. However, I wasn't confrontational or rude. As we know, some chiropractors have made claims way beyond the ones they were claiming here at the Expo of being able to help with feeding and reflux. Listeners may also remember that certain members of this particular chiropractic association were caught sneaking into hospitals to adjust spinal injured patients. 3 years ago was the last time I had helped out at the Light for Riley stall, and there was a lot more woo back then than there was in 2018. I recall that either a midwife or a chiropractic stall back then, I can't remember which one, was selling a book called Well-Adjusted Babies that had a whole anti-vaccination chapter in it. Thankfully, this time, there was no such nonsense being sold. And now, onto my interview with a woman who, along with her husband Greg, are two of the most inspirational people I have met. Here's my interview with Kath Hughes.
So I'm here with Catherine Hughes, who is the mum of little baby Riley. And as listeners may remember, Riley tragically lost his life at 32 days. He was too young to be vaccinated for whooping cough. Kath and her husband Greg have been amazing activists since then to raise awareness about the importance of the whooping cough vaccine, especially in the third trimester for pregnant mums. So, Kath, tell us a little bit about Light for Riley and your journey since Riley tragically passed away.
Thanks, Heidi. We started our Light for Riley campaign pretty much the day after we lost Riley. We'd learnt when I was in hospital with Riley that other countries were doing pregnancy vaccination programs, and I remember, as he lay dying there, sitting there thinking, why did we not have this vaccine? Why wasn't it offered to us? We put up a post on Facebook and it went pretty viral, so we had media at our house, knocking at the door the next morning, which was just beyond overwhelming, but my husband was braver than I was, and he was happy to talk to them and use that as an opportunity to create pressure and encourage the government to introduce these third trimester boosters, which, if we had had that with Riley, we really believe it would have saved his life. And it's kind of snowballed from there. We travel around to these pregnancy babies and children's expos, and I do a little bit of public speaking, and we run our social media page as well to try and encourage people to vaccinate and find out about just how dangerous whooping cough can be.
Yeah. As you remember, I was up here helping you 3 years ago at the stall in the same location. And tell me what your experience has been, the difference between 3 years ago and today in interacting with people at these expos.
There's been a huge difference. I've noticed a lot more people at this expo compared to back in 2015. A lot more people are aware of pregnancy vaccination and they're accepting of it, and they think it's the norm. They will come up to us and say, yes, we've had it. We're so proud of ourselves. Don't worry about us. We've had our third trimester booster. And you look at them and they're really proud of themselves. And it's really wonderful to see that the awareness has finally really got out there.
And have you had any experience at these expos, much experience with hesitant parents or even vaccine refusers that have approached you?
I love chatting to the hesitant parents. There's not a whole lot of them, but we do get approached from time to time. And I sort of say, look, it's normal to have questions about parenting and what we do with our children. It just shows that they're thoughtful enough to care. So we have quite long, productive discussions with these parents, and usually it ends with them being, somewhat accepting or at least willing to take on board our information. Anti-vaxxers we get a lot of online. We haven't had too much, thankfully, to deal with them at the expo. Occasionally you get the odd comment, but really most of the people at these expos are really lovely.
It's different, I find, when you actually are face-to-face with someone as opposed to the other side of a computer screen behind a keyboard. People are a lot less likely, I think, to be rude to you face-to-face, and sometimes they can, I think, be taken aback at that we're actually nice people. So the face-to-face conversations, I think, are really important to have. as important, if not more important, than the online conversations we have, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. It's completely different to interacting online. Online, people aren't scared to voice their opinion quickly, rudely, without thinking about it. They'll just do it. Whereas in person, people are a lot more thoughtful, I think, about what they're going to say, a lot more respectful. And so I'm sure there's been people who've come up to our stand who don't agree with vaccination for whatever reason, but they're polite about it and they will, at least accept our information and not, I guess, give us that abuse that we get online.
Yeah. And as far as the Light for Riley campaign goes and the Facebook page and everything, do you think it's been helpful in? It might be getting a little bit personal, but do you think it's been helpful in the grief process for you? If you were to take out of the equation the anti-vaccination people online, if you were to take away that element of it, do you think that it's been beneficial in the grieving process for you?
I do think it's quite a therapeutic process. As a bereaved parent, child loss is a pretty dark cloud, and it was really important for us to find some kind of silver lining, or else it was just really hard to function, especially in those very early days where you just feel like your heart's been ripped out and you've walked out of that hospital without your baby, a completely different person. You don't know how you're going to get out of bed the next day. But just having something to focus on was really very helpful for us in those early stages. Now it's just that sort of balancing act between, okay, well, I've got other things in my life, I've got other children, so it's a matter of balancing it and not getting too focused on this stuff, which I can, sometimes I just get so drawn into what we're doing. But overall, yeah, very, very therapeutic, I think, talking about Riley's story. It's definitely helped us having an avenue to express our emotion.
Yeah. And tell the listeners a little bit about the foundation.
We started the Immunisation Foundation of Australia about a year after we lost Riley. We wanted to create an umbrella foundation so that if other parents, had experiences with vaccine-preventable diseases, or other people wanted to have campaigns or projects just like Light for Riley, they could do it under the umbrella of our foundation. So the mission of the foundation is to reduce the amount of harm and suffering caused by vaccine-preventable diseases, both in Australia and overseas as well. So we're quite passionate about raising awareness about diseases so people don't forget, what these diseases are, that they do exist, that they're out there. And also to do some overseas aid work, which we've just commenced in Tanzania with a rollout of some pneumococcal vaccination program.
What? Really?
Yeah. It's thanks to Professor Robert Boy. It's a project that he's led and that we've decided that we would like to fund. So it's training immunisation nurses up over there to roll out a 2-dose pneumococcal vaccination program rather than a 3-dose vaccination program, which means it's a lot cheaper for the countries to run, the developing countries. But there's a lot of really good evidence that shows that 2 doses of pneumococcal vaccine is enough to protect.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Wow, you learn something new. So tell me, where can people go to if they want to find out more about the Immunisation Foundation and possibly make a donation to such a worthy cause?
That would be amazing. We don't have any funding at the moment, so it's all on donations currently, and you can donate on our website, which is immunisationfoundation.org.au.
immunisationfoundation.org.au. Okay, well, we better get back to the stall. The Pregnancy Expo is winding down and you're hopping on a plane back to Perth tonight, so you've got still a few hours ahead of you yet. But thank you for your time, and I'll catch you, I'm sure, if not at the next Pregnancy Expo, at maybe at the next Skepticon coming up. You never know.
Thanks so much for volunteering today, Heidi.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.
Quackwatch, your guide to quackery, health fraud and intelligent decisions, operated by Stephen Barrett, MD.
Quackwatch is now an international network of people who are concerned about health-related frauds, myths, fads, fallacies and misconduct. Its primary focus is on quackery-related information that is difficult or impossible to get elsewhere. Articles on quackery include quackery, how should it be defined, how it sells, 26 ways to spot it, how it harms cancer patients, 7 warning signs for bogus science, why health professionals become quacks, and many more, including in-depth looks at acupuncture, chiropractic, homeopathy, naturopathy, and much more. Visit www.quackwatch.com.
Now, here's a press release from the Queensland government. And for international listeners who may not know, Queensland is a very sizable state in Australia to the north of New South Wales. It's a massive state, popular for the Great Barrier Reef, tourism, rainforest, that sort of thing. However, here we go. Fair trading takes beef with unsubstantiated cancer cure. Business fined $11,592. And this press release comes to us on the 14th of June 2018. A Queensland business has been ordered to pay more than $11,000 by the Brisbane Magistrates Court today, 13th of June 2018, for failing to substantiate claims following an Office of Fair Trading investigation. Sun Beef Proprietary Limited, trading as Sun Ultima, failed to comply with a notice issued by the Office of Fair Trading, which was seeking to substantiate claims about its product curing skin cancer. Sun Beef was fined $10,000 plus professional costs of $1,500 in addition to $92 court costs. A conviction was recorded. The court heard that the Office of Fair Trading received a complaint in 2017 regarding a Sun Ultima product in an advertisement. The product, a 5 milliliter Sun Ultima Skin Cancer Cure, retailed for $560 and was marketed as a, quote, natural herbal derived skin cancer cure, end quote. Sun Ultima's website also featured testimonials from 3 people who claimed the product had cured their cancers. The Office of Fair Trading commenced with an investigation into Sun Ultima as it was concerned the trader was misleading vulnerable customers, many of whom may be desperate for a cure, that the Sun Ultima product was a cure for skin cancer. As the Queensland marketplace regulator, the Office of Fair Trading requested Sun Ultima provide information to substantiate the claims, identify the people who had provided testimonials, and show the product was appropriately endorsed for the treatment of skin cancer. Sun Ultima refused to provide documents substantiating the claims made for the product. Fair Trading Executive Director Brian Bauer said the result served as a prompt to businesses to treat consumers fairly. Quote, businesses must ensure that they are aware of their Australian consumer law obligations and aren't misrepresenting their products to consumers, end quote, Mr. Bauer said. Quote, a failure to follow these obligations will result in enforcement action by Fair Trading. It is particularly despicable when a business preys on desperate and vulnerable consumers. The Office of Fair Trading will investigate and bring matters like this before the courts, end quote. More information on consumer and business rights and responsibilities can be found at www.qld.gov.au/fairtrading. And of course there will be a link on this week's show notes. An important story, the correct avenues being pursued there, the correct course of action, and a company making unsubstantiated cancer cures have been brought before the courts, and we can only hope that more companies like this will end up before the courts and asked to please provide information to back up their amazing claims. And thank you to Heidi Robertson for bringing this story to my attention. Well, it's been a wonderful day here at Skeptic. How the day's still going on, but I've snuck outside. I'm with Kyle Polich, who does a podcast called the Data Skeptic. Mm-hmm. What is this all about? What are you skeptical of with data?
Well, I used to say I'm skeptical of and with data. That data is not only the tool we use to do applied skepticism, but it's something to be skeptical of because people can lie with statistics if they choose to.
That's an interesting angle because the talk which you gave about an hour ago or so was all about artificial intelligence. So how does that wrap itself into what you do?
So AI is kind of this goal state, if you will, of people in the computer science world working on machine learning. Machine learning is a powerful technology in play in a lot of places in our world today. I would be impressed if anyone could claim they don't see its benefits on a day-to-day basis, from Google searches to our phones that hear our language and all these sorts of wonderful advancements. And there's this pinnacle thing we'd one day like to do, and that's make a machine think. And while I have no doubt that eventually Homo sapiens will figure out a way to do that, the path to getting to it isn't totally clear. But I'm excited to cover the road, the advancements along that path, and also be skeptical of the claims that are a bit dubious along the lines.
There are a lot of claims out there.
Yeah.
You were speaking about some of them today, but I'm interested in this whole concept of artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. At what stage do you consider this computer sitting on the floor has artificial intelligence as opposed to, it's just a very good and quick computer?
Well, what we have today is just a very good and quick computer.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. There are things that work today that are almost spooky in how good they are. I'm impressed with language translation, the state of the art to go from English to Spanish or some other language. It used to be it was simple word replacement. And there'd be these funny things. You'd put it into some system that would translate and you'd get just gibberish out. Yes. Not so much anymore. The mistakes those machines make today are few and far between. And even the ones they do seem to highlight an incompatibility of languages, where one language is more expressive in some way than another. Yet we don't call that AI. It's very good at a very specific task. And that's what's been the major breakthroughs and achievements we've seen in the last couple of decades, getting really good at really specific things. But to get good at general intelligence, that's still just out of reach for current state-of-the-art technology.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because you hear this term, I've heard this term for years.
Yeah.
I mean, when I really think about it, one of my first jobs was in computers, educational software, and that was in the 80s. And I think I remember hearing the term artificial intelligence even way back then. Yeah.
Well, it goes back to the 50s, really. Our great founding father, Alan Turing, was the first to posit the question, can a machine think?
Yeah.
In his 1950 paper. Very forward-looking, outlined kind of the argument and how we would test for it through the imitation game. And we're still testing a bit today, but we're not quite there yet at the general intelligence level.
And in your talk, you're talking about the test. It's the Turing test, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for people who don't know, that's where a person enters a room and they have two responses, and they have to figure out if the response A is a human or a computer, and response B is from a human or a computer. And I think I've come across that myself in certain online help situations where I've been spending 10 minutes chatting to Mary or whatever it is. And then I thought, wait a minute, this is just a bot. That's scary. That's spooky.
Yeah, that technology is advancing quickly, and for specific tasks, book me a flight, arrange my vacation, things that you can kind of quantify and isolate as a limited number of inputs and outputs, that technology is really getting there, and I think we're going to see a transformation over the next 5 to 10 years where chatbots become the new user interface.
Yeah.
But in the same way, you go to your web browser to find a website. You go to your email client to do email. There's no general purpose anything yet. Obviously, Google aspires to be that with their blog or their search box, and maybe they'll get there one day, but it's not a conversational agent. And one of the things Turing identified is conversation is really a key to measuring intelligence. It's not, can one bot be convincing for 10 minutes while you find out if your warranty is expired?
Yes.
It's, when you are aware that you might be talking to a machine, can you tell the difference? If it's actively trying to deceive you, that's the real measure of an intelligent thinking machine.
And that hasn't happened yet. Although there are situations with me and my online chat where I was trying to fix a problem with my phone service. Mm-hmm. And it occurred to me sometime down the track that this wasn't a human, but not originally. They were asked, they were saying, "How are you today? What can I do for you? Let me look that up," that sort of thing.
Yeah, of course. You're going into it first with the assumption you're talking to a human,
yes,
but not necessarily the expectation that you're going to be deceived.
Yes.
And that agent, if it's well coded, it's doing a good job, and it can get pretty far into a conversation because, think about it. If you call a car rental agency, there's probably one of 4 questions you're going to ask. Can I change my appointment? Do you have availability? Things that they've heard 1,000 times and have probably been tracking, through the software they've had on the machines for a while. So building a system that's an expert in these very narrow areas can get you 10 minutes into a conversation. But when you say, oh, by the way, I'm going to need a car with XM radio and preferably one that's a hybrid, and maybe that's a task that a chatbot will soon be able to respond to. But today, it'll either respond nonsensically, reveal itself, or if they've coded it in a very smart way, maybe escalate you to a human. And if they do that seamlessly, you might not even know it's happened.
That's true. Do you think, though, in that situation where I'm gone to the webpage to ask for help and it says, chat to us now, mm-hmm. Do you think, as a courtesy, it should say, you are now speaking with XXXY, the computer?
Oh, that's a very interesting question.
Would people then just not chat to them?
I think it's entirely like a question for a sociologist, not a computer scientist. Because,
right.
People might reject it on that basis or assume it can't be good. Especially, not that I consider myself yet of an older generation, but I'm 37. There's a lot of people younger than me. I think they're more accepting of some of those things. Yeah. I don't want to talk to a chatbot most of the time because I know the limits of the technology.
I'm with you. However, if I think the chatbot can easily fix my problems, then I don't care.
Right. Instantly, yeah.
I don't have to talk to a human if a computer can solve my problems. And I guess you saw that thing a month or two back with Google where they had the voice ringing, the phone call.
Google Duplex. So I compliment Google for what they're doing there. Very interesting project, and what they're doing is interesting. I wouldn't call it artificial general intelligence.
It's mimicking intelligence. It's
mimicking, and actually, I would say, even though I don't want to start a conspiracy theory, I don't know anything behind the scenes here, but I think it was a bit of a show that they put on rather than a real technology demonstration.
I mean, what they didn't play, I guess, is the 12 times they rang up somebody and the bot got it completely wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And the real giveaway for me is those bots say things like I've probably said a couple of times. Maybe you've slipped a few in.
Sure,
Perhaps they'll disappear in editing if you clean it up. But
not now.
That's something that no current state-of-the-art technology would insert for any reason. It had to be a deliberate choice to kind of deceive the other person or make them play the game a little bit so that machine could gather some information. And if, as they point out, if calling and saying, "Are you open today on a holiday?" saves that company 18 phone calls asking the same thing because they propagate that information to the website, then that's great. Yeah. So as a technology, wonderful. As artificial intelligence, not Google Duplex.
Not yet. So what sort of things do you cover in your podcast? This sort of thing, artificial intelligence when it comes to data, or is it your podcast more broad than that?
Well, we span what I would call machine learning, data science, AI, and we dabble a little bit in interesting topics that are kind of adjacent to that. We tend to take on, as of recently, different seasonal themes. So we did a theme on computational complexity theory late last year. This whole year has been all about AI, and in July it's going to turn over to a brand new theme. It'll be something I'm not ready to release yet, but I can say it's very timely for things that are going on in the news.
Ooh, that could mean a lot of things.
Could indeed, yeah.
And how long has your podcast been out now?
We're coming up on 5 years sometime late this year, I think. Yeah, not quite at Skeptic Zone levels, but we're getting there.
Oh, congratulations. I mean, 5 years is a big deal these days. Yeah?
Definitely.
And how often does it come out?
Once a week.
Wow. And as someone who does a once-a-week podcast, I can appreciate the time and effort in putting together that. And what's the length of the podcast, roughly?
Varies. So we kind of switch up our format. I'll do interviews that'll be longer, usually 30, 40 minutes. And then just about every other episode is what we call a mini episode, 15, 20 minutes, where I talk to my wife, who's a very intelligent, smart woman, but this isn't her field. And I try and break things down to her and get her to understand the concepts I work on. So it's meant to be an explainer or a tutorial for people who are...
So she's asking the questions for the audience, sort of.
Exactly, yeah. Sort of the straight man or straight woman persona.
Yeah.
When I get into too much jargon, she'll call me out on it and say, what does that actually mean?
All right, folks, there's the clue. There's the hint for you. Data Skeptic. Mm-hmm. Skeptics, Data Skeptic.
Skeptic. Singular. With a K.
With a K. That's the name of the podcast. Links in this week's show notes. And don't be surprised, in the coming months you'll hear a rotating promotion for that podcast. Well, Kyle, great to meet you here at Skeptic Cal.
Thank you.
And a very interesting talk on artificial intelligence. And who knows, if you give that talk next year from behind a curtain, it might be a computer doing it for you.
You never know.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. This is Kyle from the Data Skeptic podcast. If you're curious about the way data is changing our world, topics like AI and all this craziness with Facebook and bots and the Twitter storm and how the algorithms that underline that work, and you don't want a technical deep dive, you want it in the vernacular, in a way that people can understand, check us out at Data Skeptic. That's what we try and do. I interview advanced professionals in the field who do this sort of research, and then I get into interesting projects as well. We're a weekly show, and you can find us at dataskeptic.com.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Now, coming up next week on the Skeptic Zone, I really don't know. That's one of the mysteries of life, what's coming up on the next Skeptic Zone episode. I don't have anything particularly lined up, but never fear, we'll get something together for you for next week. I think in the coming week I will be flying back to Sydney, Australia, back into the nice, cool winter. Now, for those people who subscribe to the Skeptic magazine, the journal from Australian Skeptics, there's a story in the latest issue, just posted a week ago, I think, about the history of the Skeptic Zone podcast. Because we just recently celebrated 500 episodes, I wrote a little history and a little bit of a background to the Skeptic Zone. If you're a subscriber, you would have read that by now, I hope. If you're not a subscriber to the Skeptic magazine from Australian Skeptics, skeptics.com.au, follow the links, and you can enjoy that magazine digitally or in your postbox 4 times a year. And thank you to those people who continue to support the Skeptic Zone via PayPal or Patreon at skepticzone.tv. And as I have been saying for 10 years, your contributions make the show possible. But until next week, actually, I've got to get back to Sydney, Australia, really. I've got to keep an eye on Maynard. If you haven't kept an eye on Maynard, go to maynard.com.au for his podcasts. But until next week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from the Bay Area, San Francisco. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.